Dr. Mark Wright.
Thank you very much, Andrew. My name is Mark Wright. I'm another Lib Dem politician. I'm a councillor for the city centre, which is called Cabot Ward, and I'm also a parliamentary candidate for Bristol South. But my profession is a software engineer, and in my particular aspect of software engineering is that I'm a database engineer. And I have a great deal of experience in building and managing and designing databases to deal with huge amounts of data on huge amounts of people. For 6 years, in fact, I worked on a giant database for a company which will remain nameless, a performance-related pay scheme for 20,000 of their engineers, which measured and took note of everything that they did during the day in order to put together what they were doing and how well they were doing and calculate how much money they needed. And it's that, among other things, which has made me so passionate about this, because I am particularly worried about what I would call function creep and mission creep, which we see in many of the things the government is doing in IT, because, to be perfectly honest, it's my day job. I do it. Managers come to me and they say, I've got a new idea, can you do it? And I tell them, yes, I can. And not only that, I can do all this extra stuff as well. Now, of course, I do that inside a private company, and I do it for entirely legitimate reasons, because these people are working for that company, but I know full well that that kind of thing happens in every database, in every circumstance. In 2005, I managed to get an anti-ID cards motion through the council and passed by the council, declaring the council to be against ID cards. Just a couple of months ago, I got another motion through the council. It was possible to get a more beefy and stronger motion through the council this time, because I'm very pleased that our Conservative colleagues have hardened their opinions against ID cards since I got the last one through, and I had to water it down back then. But this was a much stronger motion, and it also included stating that the council was against, for example, fingerprinting of children in schools and fingerprinting of punters on their way into clubs. Both of those are things now which are rising up the agenda. We have fingerprinting in schools in this city, in several schools, at least 4 or 5. Generally, it seems for things like taking out library books or buying lunch. You might think that that's astonishing. Which adult would ever give their fingerprint over to buy a sandwich at lunch? None. Absolutely right. But for kids, this is okay, it seems. The issue with fingerprinting punters in bars has not come to Bristol yet, and hopefully it never will now that this motion is passed. But in other cities, there has been pressure for fingerprinting of punters in bars. I think it's because the licensing trade knows that it will have no effect whatsoever on sales, and it's pushed as a way which will cut down on binge drinking. And I think the licensing trade knows that it will have no effect on that, so they're quite happy to see it. I was at a course in Whitehall, an IT course in Whitehall, a couple of weeks ago. I was wanting to hear about open source software and how it could be applied better in government and local government. Sadly, it wasn't about that at all. But it turned out to be very interesting, because what it did turn out to be about was the sharing of information between departments, and why information sharing inside government and local government was so important. And one of the things that was very noticeable, because I was one of the few politicians there. This was in Whitehall. It was a very posh centre, full of lots of high-powered, very well-paid civil servants from mid-ranks of Whitehall and various councils. And it was quite clear, because they used the phrase in some of their speeches, privacy lobby, that they consider privacy aspects to be an irritation that are to be managed, not to be an integral part of the way that they look at dealing with information. At one point, one of the speakers said that one of the reasons to ensure good data integrity and security of systems was to prevent the kind of outrages we've had of data loss, which lead to stirring up the privacy lobby. I mean, I was sitting at the back all this time, cringing, because it was quite obvious to me that people like us are an irritation to those people, and that is the mindset in Whitehall at the moment, and that is what we have to deal with in local government and in national government when we're looking at these things. I'd just like to end up and say that another future worry of mine is road user charging. And it's something which I'm very torn on, because I like the idea of what road user charging can bring, because it can bring rationing of road use, and in principle I'm an environmentalist and I think that we need to sort out congestion. But I simply do not trust this government to manage that data and to design it from the start in a way which absolutely guarantees the anonymity and the protection of people who are using the roads, because the reality of road user charging is that it means that all of us will be tracked in our directions through life. I don't trust the current government to even consider that to be a problem. I think that they would consider it to be an opportunity, and that scares the life out of me. And I think that this is another battle that we're going to have to be fighting soon. It's another extension of the whole database issues that we will be covering this afternoon. Then there's a saying in database engineering, if the answer to your question is another database, then you're asking the wrong question. On that note, I'd like to finish. Thank you.